29 Chaos Battlefield. Tiger 1, maybe the radiation source is still hundreds of kilometers away. We use electronic warfare pods to attract their attention. No, Lieutenant, I'm not worried about early warning aircraft, but fighter jets. Understood. Seconds later, in the cockpit of the J-10 aircraft No-02, Song-Ning found that the target data on the multifunction display suddenly became intermittent, and now he could only clearly see one of the planes flying, and the other one. Signals from both planes disappeared into the clutter. 01, they are interfering. I see. Shut down immediately and climb upwards. These fools are also confused. I can't let them figure it out. Understood. How is your IRST? Song-Ning asked. When he turned it on, Sammy had been using the passive system to search for the opponent's heat source, but the distance was too far to gain anything. I haven't found it yet, we can turn it on again. 50 kilometers away, Lieutenant Mathanga found that the trailing radiation source had disappeared, which indirectly proved his view that something was tracking behind, and their distance might not be too far. As they respond to electronic interference. I don't think it's the AirEye system. The early warning aircraft won't shut down for a small electromagnetic interference. But boss, the signal disappeared anyway. Captain Matangia didn't answer, but he was actually worried about the disappearance of the signal. Tiger 1, we are still 70 kilometers away from their heavy water factory, and there is no sign of surface-to-air missile positions. Maybe the intelligence got it right this time. I repeat the attack sequence, first the external heavy water plant, then the power plant facilities, and finally the connection to the external power transmission and transformation equipment. Gentlemen, we can't bomb their nuclear facilities directly, but they have to stop their heavy water reactor plan for many years. Understood. Lieutenant Mathanga did not dare to take it lightly. He led the team to continuously lower the altitude and dash towards the target. The last 3 Mirage 2000-5H dropped to 1000 km per hour. The ultra-low altitude of 60 meters is the lowest altitude they can theoretically reach. The radar of the air defense position has never been turned on in the direction of the important town of Sagda, which reassured the captain a little. This attack deep into the enemy's territory was very risky. The colonel expected that the Mirage 2000H team mainly carried bombs, and each fighter only carried 2 combat missiles. On the captain's HUD, only the 2-digit altitude data has been beating rapidly. Such a long flight is enough to test the pilot's nerves, especially the terrain in this area is not very flat, and they have to rely on the guidance of the terrain tracking radar. Flying against the bare hills. After entering the desert, the terrain matching system has long been unable to find the north, and now the captain can only rely on GPS and his own eyes to find the chimney of the power plant. Already bypassed Sargodha, Captain. No surface-to-air missile positions have been found. Very well, keep your course. Captain, the trailing radar has reappeared, above us. Mathanga looked down at the radar. The direction, still behind, and not from the ground as he expected. It was a fighter not too far. At this juncture, he has to make a choice, either give up the attack, turn around to confirm the distance of the enemy, or bite the bullet. He wants the ground command to make up his mind, but the VHF communication with the ground has been cut off 2 minutes ago now. Flying is a job that relies heavily on ground instructions, and the captain has never felt so isolated. Tiger Squad, don't worry about it, just focus. In 3 minutes, we'll be bombing. The RWS began to make a beeping sound, an ominous sound. Roughly, the trailing enemy plane was continuing to the scans. If they have decent downsights, we'll soon complete the tracking. Remove the bomb insurance and be ready to drop bombs at any time. The captain ordered. He had realized the danger and was determined to drop the bombs and auxiliary fuel tanks in advance to counter-attack when necessary, but he had to rely on further changes in the radar warning equipment to make a final decision. Didi's warning sound instantly turned into a screeching scream, and all three planes were locked onto the same radar. 35 kilometers southeast of the Phantom, Song-Ning restrained himself from turning on the radar to intercept the target. Through the data link, he could clearly see that three light spots were within the range of Sammy's No-01 aircraft, but he kept telling you, yourself, are just a bystander and cannot participate in the attack. Of course, it's not that he didn't know that even if Sammy's No-01 J-10B fired, there would be enough trouble in the back. And from the radar screen, there is not much difference in who is firing on No-01 and No-02. The distance of the target did not come within the 30 kilometers that Sammy had hoped, but the fire had to be fired early now, knowing that the Hyosub factory was not far away. On the vertical display, the three intercepted enemy planes began to rise in altitude, then turned, and came towards the side, indicating that they had given up their bombing and dropped their bombs ahead of time. "What are you waiting for?" Song-Ning said on the radio. He seemed to be more anxious than the colonel, for fear that if he got too close, he would get involved in the battle. "Launch." Sammy pressed the launch button, and the two missiles flew to the last target one after another. To be on the safe side, he didn't greedily direct the missile to hit two targets at the same time. 02, it's your turn to fire." "I won't fire," Song-Ning said. He was in a hurry to leave the battlefield, but it was not the time to leave. He was still covering the colonel, waiting for him to guide the SD-10 missile to a close enough distance to the target. The Phantom 03, which fell behind, began to release strong electronic interference, and the other two Phantoms disappeared from the colonel's radar screen under his electromagnetic cover, but the high-power phased array radar of the J-10B always bid firmly. The Phantom, which was a source of interference, was also directed towards him by the two missiles fired by the colonel. "No-02, I need you to monitor the other two for me." The colonel made a new request. Song-Ning had to turn on the power of the radar. He was already trapped in the battlefield and could not extricate himself. 20 kilometers away, Matanga, calling out to his mates on the radio, had seen two steam trails heading towards the trailing plane 03. "Prahaja, hurry up." Prahaja's plane didn't have enough speed to maneuver. He turned weakly to one side to try to get rid of the missile's tracking. The two missiles only swayed slightly, and immediately corrected back. "Fly in his direction. Hurry up and skydive, skydive," Matanga shouted anxiously. Before he could finish his words, a huge explosion flew through the air like a dazzling lightning bolt, and the plane disintegrated and fell into the wasteland outside Hyosub town. "Colonel, you've already hit the enemy plane, we have to leave quickly." "What nonsense, leaving now will only give them the S." Colonel Sammy tore off his mask. He was no longer dominated by Song-Ning. He quickly after burning climbed, and it seemed that he was ready to charge head-on to fight one against two. "You can't do that, madman. If we kill them all, your problem will be solved. Isn't it? Fool, you can't hover with the Phantom at a low altitude." Song-Ning had to turn to keep up. More than a decade ago, Song-Ning had flown an earlier model of this type of aircraft in France. He knew that the colonel's reckless behavior would have to suffer.